Good evening. Tonight, we're going to start a very special discourse. This is in the Siddur of the Alter Rebbe, which is the Siddur, meaning Maimarim and discourses that were said relating to the prayer book, relating to the Siddur. Okay, so this is going to actually go probably for 3 weeks. Let me just shut this so that I don't get any disturbances. This class is going to go for probably 3 weeks. I find the subject very, very interesting. It has a lot to do with Mashiach. Now, the question is, what is its connection to this week? There's openly, directly, one will argue that there's no connection of this discourse. It deals mainly with the mitzvah of Birchas Hamazon, which is the blessing that we make after food. And that's not mentioned in this week's Torah portion. It's not mentioned anything about the blessing, the after blessing that we make after food. The reason why I came across this discourse this week is because it does speak about the prohibition against forbidden relationships in this week's Torah portion. Forbidden relations, primarily relations with one's close relatives. And I mentioned this already in the Monday night class. There are deep mystical ideas, of course, in this mitzvah like everything else. And this discourse discusses them. Even though in tonight's, and that's this week's parsha, Parshas Achrei Mos and Kedoshim. So that's where I came across this discourse. And I find it very, very fascinating. To say that I understand it, I don't. But as we learn it together, we'll hopefully get some better understanding. What's so special is that it talks a lot about Mashiach and the big meal. There's been in Jewish tradition, in Talmud, all over, in the Midrash and the like, that when Mashiach will come, there is going to be a big, big meal. And we're going to have this big giant fish and this big giant ox, meat from this giant ox, and fish from this big, humongous fish. And a lot of fine wine. Now, Jews, of course, food always spoke to Jews, so we can say that's what kept them going, that they believed in the big meal. But obviously, there's deep, deep secrets in this. Leviathan fish and the Shar Habor, and especially the age-aged old wine that has been hidden, the wine that's still in the grapes from the 6 days of creation. And that discussion, a lot about that we're going to learn. And as I mentioned, we're not going to finish this discourse. We are going to learn the essential mimer itself we're going to learn this week. And then there is an explanation on the discourse, and then there's a second explanation. And I'd like to learn all three of them. So I'm planning to learn the discourse itself and maybe a little bit of the first explanation tonight, and then we will continue. Okay, so this is in the Siddur of the Alter Rebbe, which is called Siddur Imdach, Daf Kuf Beis. Okay, so it says as follows. Inyan Hazimun, the idea of the blessing of the Zimun. What is Zimun? We know that when a person eats bread, we're obligated to make an after blessing. We're really supposed to make a blessing before we eat and after we eat. But the blessings we make before we eat are all biblical. The blessings we make after we eat, they are biblical. That's the Torah obligates us. But only when one ate bread. That's when it's biblical, the mitzvah of Birchas Hamazon. Now, there is another thing, that if 3 people eat together, then they're obligated, before they bench, that they should make an invite. That means they say a special sentence. It's like 2 or 3 sentences, in which one of the 3, invites the others to join him in Birchas Hamazon. And he says, let us bench. And then everybody answers, yes, let God's name be blessed. And then this person says, yes, okay, let God's name be blessed. Okay, here we go, we're going to bench. So that's the idea. It's called Zimun. What it really means is, Zimun means an invitation. It's the blessing of the invitation. But you only do an invite. If you're eating yourself, you don't invite yourself to bench. You're eating yourself. But if you're eating, and if you're eating with 2 people, you still can't make an invite. You can only do an invite for benching if you have 3 people. And that's what the Maimer begins with. Why do you need 3 people in order to invite to do Birchas Hamazon? Why can't you make the invitation? We understand that one person can't invite himself, but once you have someone else there, invite him to bench with you, and you'll do it together. Why only when there's 3? That's the beginning discussion on the Maimer. The Maimer is going to discuss Bichlal, what's the idea of benching, meaning the blessing we make after the food. What's the spiritual dynamics of that? What does that accomplish? What is what do we add to that when we make an invitation before, and why can we only do that by 3? Then once we'll understand that, he's going to start. Now, one of the things we do is usually when we're benching, is if you're doing it with more than one person, you bench on a cup. If there's 3 people. That means you take a cup of wine, and people don't always do this, but on Shabbos, Yom Tif, or any special occasion. You take a cup of wine, you hold it in your hand, and the one who does the invitation holds the cup up and he says, everybody's invited to participate. If there is 10 people in the room, then they say, not just let us bless God, let us bench. They say, let us bench Hashem. They say God's name. They call it Elokeinu. But you're holding up this cup, and this cup is called Kois Shel Bracha. It's the cup on which you make the bracha, in which you make the blessing. Obviously, it's also called the cup, not only in which you make the blessing, but the cup of wine that's filled with blessings, because all the blessings are contained in that cup. So obviously, it's very, very powerful. You're holding up a cup of blessings, a Kois Shel Bracha. It says when Mashiach is going to come, there's going to be the big meal, and all the tzaddikim and all the Jewish people are going to be there. After the meal, you have all the millions of Jews, and they're going to honor. You have so many rabbis. Who are you going to honor? Who are you going to honor to lead the benching? So it says that first they're going to extend the cup to Avram Avinu, to Abraham, the grandfather of all the Jewish people. And they're going to say, Avram, you bench. And Avram is going to say, I can't bench because Yishmael came from me. I fathered a troublemaker. His name is Yishmael, and his descendants are still making so much trouble in the world today that we don't even know what to do with them. The grandchildren of Yishmael. So Avram said, look what a mess I created. I'm embarrassed. I'm not stepping up to bench. So then they will honor Yitzchak to bench, and Yitzchak will say, I'm also embarrassed because I created the Romans. I created Esav. Esav is my son. And look at the horrors that he inflicted on the planet throughout the thousands of years of brutal suffering, coming from the Esav Edomite world, which originates in the Romans, but it means generally the entire Western Roman whatever, which is all the descendants of Rome and all that persecution, all that horrors they brought. So Isaac Yitzchak is going to be embarrassed to bench from Esav, from Yitzchak. And then they're going to say to Yaakov, Jacob, you bench. And Yaakov is going to say, I can't bench, I married 2 sisters. He's going to be embarrassed to bench because he married 2 sisters. And we know the Torah had forbidden the marriage of 2 sisters. So we mentioned this Monday night in the class that Yaakov was permitted to marry 2 sisters. There was no sin. Not only wasn't it a sin, as we're going to see in the discourse, this was an awesome marriage, the highest kind of a marriage possible. But Yaakov is saying, since in the future this is going to be prohibited, therefore he's declining the honor. And so they pass the cup around to Moses, and Moshe says, I can't bench because he hit the rock, and then they give it to Aaron, and Aaron says he can't bench because he made the golden calf. And so we go around until we give it to King David, to David HaMelech. And we ask David to bench, and David steps up, and he does the Birchas Hamazon without any shame, without any discomfort. And that's why David HaMelech says, Kois Yeshua's Esa, the cup of salvation I lift up. This is the ultimate cup of salvation, which means the one that's responsible for the elevation of all worlds, because the raising of that cup up to say, let us bless God, is really the tikkun of everything. That's like the completion. That's like putting the icing on the cake and completing all the work of the Jewish people from when the world was created. That's like the completion of everything. the one that finally lifts the cup up to receive the infinite blessings of Hashem. And David HaMelech is not going to be afraid to do that blessing. So all that subject is going to be discussed in this discourse. Why is Avram uncomfortable, and Yitzchak declining, and Yaakov feels unworthy? And only David HaMelech can do that final elevation of doing the benching in the Koshel Bracha. This is just a little synopsis of the subject that we're going to talk about. Now we're going to learn inside. Inyan Hazimun, the idea of the blessing of the Zimun. It's a little bit, the wordings over here are a little bit of an old print. It's not like we're used to. We're used to the different letters, so it might be a little harder to follow, but okay, here we go. Inyan Hazimun, the idea of the blessing of the Zimun in Yesh Le'Meratam. Yesh Le'Varatam. We need to explain the reason. Why is it only when 3 people eat together they have to make an invite? Only when 3 people sit together, then they make an invite. But 2 people do not set a blessing. 2 people don't establish the need to make an invite. And if the reason is and if you say because you need 1 person saying and 2 people answering, 2 people listening. Good, so who says, why do you need 2? If 1 person is saying, it should be 1 listener and that's good enough. Even into 1 person can say, and the second person can hear, and you can invite him, come participate in the bench. The idea is, the main idea of the blessing of the food, as it says, you will eat, you will become satiated, uberachta, and you will bless. Hakavana, who the intention is, because it's through the food that a person eats. Why do you have to bench in the first place? Make the blessing the after blessing. It's because when you make the after blessing, you're causing an elevation in something that just happened. When you're eating, energy has now been introduced into your body. Extra life. Food is life-giving. When we don't eat for a while, we become very exhausted, very tired, very weak, can't really do anything. So the food adds energy and life to the person. The problem is, this food is an outsider. And it's now entering into a Jewish zone. It's entering into a holy place. It's entering into Jewish space, godly space. The problem is, who says it's ready to enter into godly space? A Jew's space is holy space. A Jew's consciousness is supposed to be holy consciousness. This food is coming right from the klipa. We know that everything in this world is not holy. Everything in this world is part of the concealment, part of the blockage, part of the shell reality, part of what's called the external dark things. Everything, the whole physical planet is an entity from klipa, from darkness. So how does this just enter into your space and just sit there? So you have to make sure to first convert it. You have to convert it and make it Jewish. You have to make the food Jewish. Because if the food is not Jewish, it should not belong inside a Jew. How do you convert the food? You convert the food by saying a blessing after you eat. When you're drawing down what's the blessing? Blessing is an illumination, a godly illumination. You're causing light and godly revelation to shine upon that food. And when you're shining that light upon that food, so that energy can now become integrated and assimilated into holiness. The food became enlightened, so to speak, as a result of a person eating it. Similar, we spoke 2 weeks ago, that when eating is the same like the mizbeach, that a shulchan of a person's table is compared to the altar, the mizbeach. So with the mizbeach was the same thing, the altar in the temple. You took a cow and you put it on the altar. When you put the cow on the altar, what happened? The cow that was till now a cow like every other cow, eating grass, sleeping most of the day, and having just living a life totally devoid of anything, any higher consciousness and any higher awareness. A cow is just serving itself. There's nothing else to the cow's life. Not its fault, but that's just the way it is. It's not in touch with a higher reality. When you take the cow and you put it on the altar and it gets consumed in God's fire, it becomes holy energy. It becomes part of the burning fire. It becomes fire. So something that was outside of the realms of holiness was integrated, assimilated, and included into Kedusha. Just like it is with the altar, every Jewish body is like an altar. Your table is like the altar. Food goes onto your table. Now it needs to be rectified. It has to go out of the klipa realm, and it has to enter into the unity. That's the idea. The difference between klipa and kedusha is holiness and the unholy. Holiness exists in unity. Holiness acknowledges and recognizes that God is, and besides God, nothing else is existence. When someone acknowledges that, then they're holy. So as long as the food, until now, was living in a klipa state, so now you have to take that food and assimilate it into this consciousness. How do you do that? So when you make the blessing, part of it has to do with your intentions when you're eating. When you're eating the food and you have the right intentions, that you're going to use the food not just for the gluttonous experience of the enjoyment of the food, but you're going to use the food and convert it to energy, and through that energy, you're going to be able to serve your Creator. So you're acknowledging God in the food that you're eating. That's part of the process of getting rid of the klipa, of the unholy, and redeeming the spark that's in the food and including it into Kedusha. But that's only part of it. The completion of it is after you eat the food, and the food is already inside of you. When you say a blessing, that extra dosage, what is a blessing? A blessing is godly revelation. Baruch. And just simply, if you're just saying the blessing and you're conscious of that you're saying a blessing, sadly a lot of times, especially people who have grown up with blessings, that's the advantage of being a newcomer in observance, because you're very, very aware of what you're doing. You're very mindful. If you're born with it, you are a mumbler. Literally, you are a mumbler. You know what it means, a mumbler? You mumble. It's ridiculous. And that people all their life mumble. They never give 2 minutes of thought to what they're saying. And I'm talking about people with long beards and like this, because you're just accustomed to it from when you're a little child. And you just do it. You do it habitually, robotically. It's almost like pre-programmed. Your body, you can't even put food in your mouth without your body first mumbling. But you're not thinking of what you're saying. But if you're saying a blessing with a little bit of consciousness, so the very notion, the very saying of the blessing is, what are you saying? You're tuning in. Blessed are you, God, who created this food. I'm thanking you, God, for the food that you gave me. So that blessing itself makes the person become aware that God nourishes him, and God is his sustainer, and God is the root of this food. And by doing that, you're not only impacting your own consciousness, you're impacting the consciousness of that food. You're changing the dynamics of that food. Literally, the cellular infrastructure of that thing is changing to become holy as opposed to unholy. And then it can become part of a Jewish soul, part of the Jewish experience. And that's the idea of Birchas Hamazon, of benching. As he says, and he explains it now in these words. This energy, it's coming from a world of separation. This cucumber, this piece of chicken, whatever it was, this comes from a world of fragmentation. The chicken was living its existence unknowing, thinking it's the center of the universe. Nothing to do with God. Okay. But now and it's coming, and where is it coming from? It's coming from one of the 70 ministering angels, Maayon Sarim the Noga, from the 70 ministering angels of Noga. Noga is the glowing shell, because the reason why he says it comes from the glowing shell is because there are other shells that Kabbalah speaks about that are too dark, they're too opaque, we can't rectify them, and that's all non-kosher food. So you can't enlighten them. It's like sometimes there are certain people that you know that if you talk sense to them, they'll hear. And then there's a person that's so dense that no matter what you say, and no matter what kind of convincing argument, they're not a vessel to hear. Just like it is with people, the same is also with food items, with objects. Everything the Torah deems non-kosher is the Torah says forget about it. It's too dense. You can't knock sense into its head. But a chicken is redeemable. A rabbit isn't, but a chicken is. If you shecht it in a kosher way, and you eat it the right way. So, but before you enlighten it, it comes also from the shells, but it's not such a dense shell. It's called the glowing shell, because a little bit light is coming through the shell. It's like translucent. It's not totally opaque, and that's called the 70. And why does he say 70? Because there are 70 nations, according to Torah. How you count that today geographically and say 70 nations, I'm not sure. But there are 70 nations according to the Torah, and each nation has an angel above that's the source of energy and life to that nation. These angels above are also corrupt. They're the source of corruption. It's not just physical corruption. The corruption doesn't begin down here. The corruption begins up there. Now, this food, or whatever it is receiving its vitality through that shell, through that angel above, which is corrupting the food. Now, you have to uncorrupt it. When you make the blessing, you have to deprogram it and reprogram it to have, change its understanding, its reality. Ki yadua, as it is known, shakol doim doimim tzemeach chayim medaber, that all inanimate objects and all vegetation and all animal and all human being, the asiya, from our physical world, asiya is the physical world, nishpaim, receive their vitality, mibchenas noga, from the klipa that's called noga. Shahu, which is mu'urav, it's a mixture tovera, good and bad. Why is it mixed good and bad? The goodness that's in it means that it has potential to be liberated. It has potential to come into unity. But if you don't fix it, it remains, if you don't repair it, it remains in an unclean state, in an ungodly state. And that's the ra, that's the bad. So it's a mixture of good and bad. Lekach, therefore, and it comes ultimately, where did this mixture begin? Where did the world become polluted? From the tree of knowledge. The tree of knowledge was also the knowledge of good and bad. And that mixture of good and bad that was in the tree of knowledge perverted all of existence and all of creation until Mashiach comes, and which we will bring the world back to a state of holiness and wholesomeness. But how do we do it? Piece by piece. We do it every time we eat. We're converting things into Kedusha as we take things in. But in order to finalize that conversion, you make the blessing. That's why you have to make a blessing on the bread that you eat, in order to draw down godly revelation. When someone says the blessing on the food, also on the added energy that was now added into your life, into your body, through the bread that you ate. And now the bread as well should be absorbed into godly revelation. And the bread, which is now part of your body, should not remain sticking out of Kedusha. Because a Jew is not supposed to have any piece of him that's not included in the unity. We have to be completely immersed in the unity. Like the bread was before. Now, how much is your benching going to influence you? To take the food from the klipa and integrate it into holiness, into unity. To what degree is your blessing after the meal going to affect you? It doesn't happen by everybody the same. Every person different. It depends on how expansive your godly consciousness is in the first place. If your godly consciousness is in a state of strong expansion, which means it's very, very powerful, that the person is living in soul consciousness, in a higher awareness, and that's dependent on a person's prayer in the morning, because the longer you pray in the morning and the more you meditate, it also depends on a person's refinement of soul. Some people have very refined souls, and therefore they're able to sense the divine and the godly in a far more potent and a far more sharp way. Other people just doesn't really, because their souls are a little denser. But in addition to that, it depends on the work we put in every day. When we pray in the morning, when we daven, and we meditate on God's greatness, that has an impact on the entire day. Even when the prayer is over, and even when we're not in direct concentration, even when we're not directly concentrating on Kedusha, on a mitzvah, we're doing our business, whatever it is that we're doing. Whatever it is that we're doing throughout the day. It's a davening. When you daven in the morning, that leaves a lasting impact on the entire day. So then when you eat, and then you bench, the benching that you bench kind of throws you back into the place that you were during prayer. Now, during prayer, you had absolute emunah that God runs the world, because you were really focused on it. You entered into the zone of your neshama, and you sensed that whatever seems to be independent is baba maisis. Whatever seems to have any power, it's baloney. The only thing that has power is only God. And it was so crispy, it was so sharp. But during the course of the day, especially since God doesn't give us a livelihood through us sitting and laying in bed and filling our pockets with gold coins, it requires us using our minds and doing all kinds of things. So the klipa consciousness begins to kick in, slowly seep in, where a person begins to think that my success and my thing is dependent on all kinds of other things, on myself and how smart I am, and also on this thing, on this one or that one, and all the other causes, and we forget the unity. But if we daven appropriately during davening, and then later we eat and we bench, so the benching reminds us, refreshes it. Obviously, so that's what we're saying over here. The stronger you davened, the stronger impact it's going to have, the consciousness that you're going to have during the time of the Birkat HaMazon, during the benching, is going to be sharper, in which you're going to feel and sense very strongly that God is the only reality. And then the food that you ate is going to be totally assimilated into God's unity. And it's not going to remain in klip. But if your prayer was kind of fast and not mindful and just whatever, so how strong is going to be your benching? Obviously, you're not in a mindful state. So then, even if you bench, we can't say it doesn't have any effect because you're still doing what God told you to do, but it's not going to resonate as deep and as strong like if you had a thorough prayer in the morning. And that's what he's saying over here. The kol chad v'chad, and every person, lefim shi'urid alay, according to his shiur, according to his understanding, ba'ava v'yira, according to their love to God that they experience and fear. Every person, love and fear. Ba'avaydasai, through one's service, b'torah utfilah, with Torah study also impacts. Because what does Torah do? Also makes us aware of God. So the more Torah we study, and the more prayer, the more we invest in our prayer, the greater the chances we have that when we eat, the food that we eat should not remain outside of holiness, but it should be absorbed into Kedusha. Or ma'asem tovim, and good deeds that we do. So this will decide of how much godly revelation will come down in your benching, and as a result of your benching, into the food that you ate. Also in the food that you ate. That food it too will become enlightened with an awareness of Hashem Echad. Sheyuchlal gamhu, that it too, what does it mean, the food? It means the divine spark that's in the food. Because ultimately, nothing can exist without God being inside of it. But the divine spark was trapped in the klipa, in the unholy. And now you're extracting it, and you're bringing it into Kedusha. And it's becoming unified with holiness. V'zahu pirish, and that's the reason when we bench, we say we have to make a blessing al hamazon, on the food. So the simple meaning is, on the food, meaning because you ate. You ate something, so on the food, you make a blessing. But then the word on doesn't really fit so well. It should have been, you're making the blessing because of the food. Bishvil hamazon. That's the right word. Not al hamazon, on the food. But according to what we're learning now, is that the food itself needs to be converted to Kedusha. The food itself is a Gentile. You can't have a piece of a Gentile inside of you until you convert it. You have to be Megayer it. So that's the idea. Al hamazon. You have to draw godly light down, shine it on the food, that the food changes. Koloimar olav milmaila, on top of the food, you have to change. Mamshichin gili alakus, you draw down godly revelation. Bibrachazu, because with this blessing, because every blessing means channeling. That's what a blessing means. Sheyuchlal gamhu, that it too should become absorbed in Kedusha. The yis'ale, and it should be elevated. And if you eat properly, when a tzaddik eats, when a saintly person eats, when a God-fearing man eats, so the food that they eat literally is like it's being put on the altar, on the mizbeach. It's elevated to God, like a korban. The yis'oilek, the yis'ale, and it's elevated ka'oila, like an ola, ukekarban, like a korban. Habehema gaba mizbeach, like an animal that is offered on the mizbeach. Why? Because today's days when we don't have an altar, we don't have a mizbeach, how do we convert the unholy into holiness? We used to have a converter. The mizbeach was the converter. You put it, we said earlier, take the animal, it's living in its own dark space, you put it on the Mizbeach, it gets converted into a godly fire. It becomes part of God. You converted it. You saw it with your own eyes. Something that was outside became... But now we don't have that. The sages say, so what do we do now? Your table is meant to be that converter. Because it's a Jewish table. And the person that's eating it is recognizing Hashem Echad. And he's devoted to serving Hashem with the power that he gets from that food. So Gam Achshav Shulchani Shel Adam Mechaper is an atonement. Kamay Mizbeach, like the Mizbeach, Ikke Yedua, as it is known. The Inyan HaKarban Gaba Mizbeach. And what was the sacrifice on the Mizbeach? Yedua, as we spoke earlier. Shehu Inyan, this is the idea of Aliyas, Reish Peches Netzutzin. You're elevating the 288 sparks. According to Kabbalah, the amount of sparks that became fragmented throughout all of the cosmic world, out of all the cosmos, and got sort of lost in the darkness of the world, is 288 sparks. For whatever reason, that number. And that's what we have to correct. So that's what you did when you did on a Mizbeach. Sheyesh bedalet chayes shebemarkava denoiga. There is the four, and these sparks got lost where? They got lost in the world, but some of them got lost in the animal kingdom. Some of them got lost in the birds. Some of them got different parts. And the origins of them are the four beasts of the chariot, four creatures in the chariot of God, which represent the different forms of life. And they contain within themselves deposits of divine sparks, which fell down, and our job, and where did they fall? In the animals and everything. But part of it is in the animals, and when we take the animals, we put them on the Mizbeach, we're retrieving a spark and bringing it back home. That's why sacrifice is on the Mizbeach. On the altar, the Mizbeach was called, offering things on the Mizbeach was called eating. Like the Karban in the Torah, the Karban is called lechem. It's bread. Hashem says, give me my bread every day. Feed me my lechem, because it's eating. Same idea like eating. As we said earlier, when you're eating, you're taking something that is ungodly. Now you're bringing it into you. It becomes holy. It's my bread for my fire. So this can be understood to those who understand. Okay, this is the idea why we bench. Again, there's food. The food is outside of Kedusha. You took it into your body. You can't leave, just like physically. It's the same thing physically. You know, in order for food to be healthy, it has to be able to be broken down in the body till it's able to become your body. If the food remains food and doesn't get broken down into the bloodstream and into the body, that's going to kill a person. It has to become part of you. So just like the physical food has to become part of your physical body, the spiritual dynamic, the energy of the food has to become part of your Jewish identity, of your Jewishness. And that you do through Birchas HaMazon, when you bench after eating. Now he's going to explain, until we began the class, why do we make, when we have three people, why do we make a bracha Birchas Hazimun? Why do we make an invitation? Rabbosai, let us bench. Why do we do that? So what's different than when we're with one person or when we're with three people? So the general gist of the answer, I'm going to give a little introduction before we learn it inside. The gist of the answer is as follows. When one person is benching, so imagine as we said earlier, every time we do Birchas HaMazon, every time there is a blessing of food, what you're really doing is you're opening a channel. You're opening a channel of godly flow of energy to come down. If it's one person, so imagine a river, when a river is flowing, and you want to bring water to irrigate one field. So what do? You make a ditch in the ground, and that creates a little stream or a little canal. And that's how you bring the water from the river into the field, and it irrigates the field. Okay. Now what happens, however, if there's a whole village that needs their fields irrigated, but the river is over there, and you need to bring water to the entire village. So what are you going to do? Smart thing to do is not to go and make a bunch of canals all the way from the river. It's just not really going to work. The better thing to do is you make a deeper canal, a much deeper canal, much wider and much deeper. You open up from the river a whole little rivulet, like a small little river kind of going in, and you create a big, and then you dig out a huge dig out in the ground, which becomes a reservoir, becomes like a lake. And then from this reservoir lake, from there, which is much closer to the village, from there you open up the streams and whatever, and that will go down and will water the entire place. And that's because you're going to now bring water for a whole village or for a whole city. If that requires much more water, if it requires more water, you need to make what's called a brecha. What's a brecha? A brecha is a pool. And that will be sufficient to hold all the water that is going to be given for this entire village. And he says that's the difference between one person benching himself and when you have three people benching together. When you have one person benching himself, or even two people, as we're going to see soon, it's considered a private line. Private line, you can just open up a little thing. Now the water comes, it's great. When you have three people together, it's called already public. It's called already a community, even though it's only three. Because as he's going to explain soon, three represent already the source to be able to make multiplicity. Because once you have three, you can create variations, without an end variations. Because once you're mixing, you can make different mixtures, and it can go on and on. To receive, but when there is many, you need to have a far more powerful flow. And in order to have a powerful flow, you need to go to a higher source, and you need to dig out this brecha, this pool. And that's what happens when three people sit together, and that's why you have to have the bench, the person lift the cup up and say, Nevarech, or we say it in Yiddish, we say, Rabbi Sai Mivel benchen. My masters, we're going to bench. The invitation is what really is doing is, it's going to a much higher source, drawing forth a pool of water, and from that pool, the flow is flowing to each individual person that is benching along and bringing much more blessing than if a person is eating by themselves. He's now going to explain why three. What's the significance of three people? Because three is a source already of public, of many. Two, when you have two entities, you have two beings that are clashing with each other. You don't really have anything, and when they're clashing, it remains two. The only way to get three is when you have one opinion, you have a second opinion, and then you have a third opinion in the middle that is formed from between both of them. It's like someone who's considered a arbitrator, who arbitrates between the two, and he comes up with a third idea. Now, once you have that, that's Tiferes. Tiferes is the combination of two opposites, and when you have Tiferes, you have the ability to have a rabbin, to have a group. And this is a group blessing. And a group blessing needs a higher amshacha. So now let's read it over here. V'hine yedua, and it is known, shebekol makoim, that in every place, yesh gimel kavin. In general, he says, there are three channels. Yamin v'smoil v'emtza. There are three channels through which any flow of godliness flows to the creation through three channels. There is the right side, there is the left side, and there is the middle. Just like in a human being. The right side is that right arm, left, and the center. Hamachriya. Now he says that's on all levels. V'nikra, in the world of midos, in the world of the emotions, it's in the emotional realm of a person, it is kindness is one attribute. Discipline and severity is on the left side. And then you have harmony, tiferes, beauty, truth, that's in the middle. And harmonizes the two extremes. So that's called chagas, chesed, gevura, tiferes. B'midos, that's in the midos. Intellectually, you also have, in the intellect, you also have three. You have chachma, you have chabad. Chachma, which is wisdom, is on the right side. Bina, which is understanding, is on the left side. And then you have the center, the back, which is called das, knowledge, which is in the middle. Okay. They're called Chabad. How about in action, when it comes down to practical behavior? Also you have three. And in the world of action, Nikra Nehi, Netzach Hod Yesod. If you look at the Sphira charts, so you have triangles, Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, or Chachma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach Hod Yesod. Three triangles. Ubekom Makom Gilo Eiler hein niptzayin. And in every level, these three exist. Why? Lefisha yesh beis k'tzalos, because there are two extremes. Ha'echad noitel yamin, one is leaning to the right. V'echad noitel l'smoil, and the other one is leaning to the left. V'amamutza, and then the mediator, hu ha'machriya beineim, he's the one that mediates between them. That's why we find the Jewish people, we have three fathers. Megama avos, our fathers, our patriarchs, are also three. Hem shloisha, shehen b'chenas chesed gevurah teferes. Because Akiyadu, as it is known, the Avraham Bekava Yamin, that Avram Avinu, our father Abraham, was to the right side. That's why he was full of kindness and givingness all the time. Yitzchak is on the left. That's why he was very, very strict. And then Yaakov is in the center. Lefisha Avos, because the Avos say Nena Merkava. The Avos, they are the Merkava. They are the chariot. So they are the chariot to God. So just like everything that is above, all flow of energy comes through the three channels. The Yedua Gamkein, it is also known, Maimer Rizal, what the sages say, the Ein Rabim Pachos Mishloisha, that a Rabim, many, always has to be three. Avalashnayim, but two of them, Ein Nikra Rabim, but two of them are not called Rabim. Ki Yedua, as it is known, you need to have three. Why? Because only when you have right side, left side, and middle, nikra his chalkus, then it's called a division, shashayach le'inyan riboy, that is relates to multiplicity. Why? Because through the leaning of three of them, you can create many. Why? So in order to create variations, you need to have at least two. Okay? If you have two things, then you can create. If you only have one entity, that's one. You need to have two colors. To create different blends of color, for instance, you have to start with two colors. But two colors is not enough. Because two colors, if they don't blend, if they don't go together, then each one is on their own. So you need a blender that blends the two together. In that blend, the question is, how much percent of this, how much percent of that? Based on that, you can start creating already different shades and different colors. But it always requires to have two and a third one that reaches to both of them and brings them together. So Lefi, that's why he says you can't have many, you can't come to many unless you have three. Masha Enke, Adein Shir. Hold on. Then it can become who knows how many. Adein Shir without an end. But in general, it's only three. If you only have the right and only the left, you won't get many. Because then there is no machriya, there's no decider who decides, who puts lahate sadavar to finalize it. Va'alkein, and therefore we also know that in a court of law, in a Jewish court, there has to be a minimum of 3 judges. And that's how all monetary disputes are solved by a court of 3 judges. Why? One judge has to be able to say innocent. The other judge that he's doesn't owe anything. The other judge has to say no, he's guilty, he has to pay. And then you have to have the third one who has to come up with some kind of a medium to figure it out in between. One vindicates, and one finds guilty. And the other one is kind of finds the middle ground. And then the judgment, because if you only have kindness, you're going to end up being kind to those that shouldn't be kind to. If you only have judgment, that's also not a thing, because just everything's going to fall apart. Just if you have just judgment, you have to have what's called compassion, which is a mixture of both. That's called many. Only 3 is called already metamanal v'darlamei. Now we'll understand also when it comes to the blessing, the grace after the meal by benching. When you have 3 people, which they're called already many. When you have 3, you have already million. 3 people together already represents millions of levels. Because you got 3, you got the chesed, gevurah, teferes. And then you can cause who knows how many different tamshachas. So then, chayavim lezamin, they have to make a zimun, v'lo shnayim, and not two. Two people sitting together, one can't say to the other one, I'm inviting you to bench. Doesn't do anything. Because the bracha that's called to three is a group blessing. And there's a difference between a single blessing and a group blessing. It's a bracha that's being drawn to a rabbim, because three is called rabbim, as we said before, but not two, as we said earlier. And this is the reason, and this is the reason why one of them has to say, and the other two have to listen. Now he doesn't say it over here, but the Tzemach Tzedek in his mimer, which gives a little fill-ins, says that the one who announces, that's the Teferes. And he calls out to the Chesed Gevura. When three Jews are together, you have Chesed Gevura Teferes. And you can't necessarily decide who is the Chesed, who is the Gevura. Say, oh, you're a very nice guy, you're the Chesed. You're very tough, you're Gevura. And we don't know. It's always when three Jews are together. It sets, Hashem brings it together to represent the supernal realm of Chesed Gevura Teferes. Now when you have that setting, whoever is going to do the benching, he is the Teferes. And he's calling out to the two extremes, to the Chesed and the Gevura, come on, let's work this out, stop fighting. Let's come together. Let's figure out how we can blend the Chesed and the Gevura and to create harmony. So he's the one who invites, and the other ones listen and they concede to the blessing, which means to work together. And as they work together, then we have the various different combinations. Is when one of them bench with that, that three are called a rabbim. So now he gives but why do they have to make an invitation? So here he's going to explain the idea that we said before from the reservoir. Hanor, when you have a river, when you want to bring the river down to one place, only one place, one field needs to be irrigated from this river. Ain't tzarich, then you don't need to make a big deal. As we said earlier, you will make one long ditch. The ktsara can be very narrow and short. The lo yamuka doesn't have to be deep. Kebrecha like a pool. Right? You just take a little water and you cause that little brooklet to go down into the field and serve as an irrigation. But if you want to draw down to many places, I think the word over here is not mikama, but it's supposed to be likama, like you see in a minute. Too many places. Then you have to make a deep brecha, a deep pool, like we said. What do you do when you want to irrigate an entire city? You make a big reservoir, and from the reservoir, which receives the water from the rivers, from one river, from two rivers, and then from there you can draw down and serve as a samach lenar next to the river, and you draw into it a lot of water, and it gets full. Also similar to, the mashal that Tzemach Tzedek gives another mashal. I have this huge tank, water tank. But I can't serve. The individual people come with a little cup and little bottles. I can't pour from the huge tank. Because the water, if I try to tilt this tank, first of all, it's too heavy. Even if I tilt it, it's going to just overflow. The flow is so powerful. If you hold a little cup or a little bottle under it, it's going to splash right over it. So what do you have to do? You have to fill a huge bucket, which is much smaller than the big tank. From the bucket, you can open up little spouts or whatever it is, or pour into smaller things. That's called a brecha. And that's the difference. When one person is benching, he's opening a little faucet. One little charitz. And it's from a lower place. The hamshach is coming from a lower place. When you have a group blessing, this is already a chesed gevura teferes. This is representing already millions of people. Hamshacha is going to go flowing everywhere. It's amazing. It's only three Jews. What are they doing? They're eating, right? They sat down to eat peanut butter and jelly. Okay? They had a little lunch. And yet, they're going to bring now down, flow to all of the worlds. They're making a group blessing. So what are they doing? They have to first draw down into a brecha. That's the idea of the invitation. Rabbi Sai, let us bench. You fill up a reservoir, and then each one is drawing from that reservoir to his own private life, into his neshama, and into his, as we said earlier, to the food that you eat, so you can enlighten that food, and that food should become Jewish, become part of you. So that's the idea. Masha Enkein, as he says, from that pool. And the reason is, we're going on to the top of the second column. The river cannot divide itself into tiny little flows. It has to come through the brecha of the pool. At first it has to become included in the big pool. And from there it will splinter into small little individual flows. And now we'll understand the same thing as by benching. Three people are many. When you want to draw it down to many, you have to make a deep pool close to the first source. Inyan Hazimun, and this is the idea of the zimun, the invite that we invite. Let us bless. I never thought about that. That little statement has such power. That's opening the reservoir that from there we're all gonna draw. Our desire is we first want to draw down a great illumination that includes in it everything that needs to be drawn down later, befrat individually. The reason is because when you want to influence many, which is a group, the ray, the light has to come with a great illuminance, just like the reservoir. It can't come through a tiny little narrow path. Maayon, like a Maayon, which is a spring. That's coming through a little shvil, to an individual place. That's when a Jew is sitting alone in his kitchen and he's benching. So he's opening a little streamlet for himself. He's drawing down. There's no doubt that he's drawing down, but it's a much lesser flow. He's not plugging into the reservoir, only through his own private little channel. And that's the reason why we find the halacha is that if you are sitting with three people and eating, it is forbidden to split up. You're not allowed to split up. Three people that's sitting, you're not allowed to get up and do your own benching and run away. You have to ask the others and you have to do a benching. If you have 10, you're not either allowed to split. Because then you have to bench with Hashem's name and eat with 10. Only if you have six people are allowed to split into two groups. But up to from 3 to 6, you can't split. Because you have, why? What's wrong if everybody just benches individually? Because once you have the power to bring down a group blessing, which is a far more powerful blessing, which is from the big brecha, from the big pool, from the big reservoir of godliness, then it's forbidden for you to take the lesser light when you can get a. Hashem says, you have the capacity to bring in something so much greater. You're not allowed to settle for less. They can't divide for everybody to make the bracha on his own, because Hashem wants that you should receive a much higher blessing, which is much greater when everybody would make their own blessing. And they need to receive the hamshacha as it is divided from the rabbim, from the many. The mashal mazeg is another example, which I don't really understand so well. Miner echad adolek, when you have one candle that's burning, legimel neiros hadolkim, to 3 candles that are burning. Shegimel neiros hadolkim arasim yosef. I guess when you have 3 candles together, like a havdalah candle, which is made from 3 different neiros, it creates a much bigger flame. I guess that's what it is. An individual candle, an individual flame. Put 3 of them together, you have a bigger fire. And the bigger fire is not just 3 fires. There is, in addition to the 3 candles, it's not just the sum total of 3. When you have 3 candles burning together, you have enough like a fire of 6 candles. It's more. It's not just 3 together happen to be touching. It creates a blaze. And that's bigger. Lekach tzrichim lekabel ma'oira meir keneged kulam yachad shrei b'tziruf fel yachoy l'liyah shalheves gedoyla. There can be a big shalheves al derech mashal. Ma'ashekan amavarach yechidi if someone benches himself a daily meir. B'kolzem moving gam kein atam will also understand the reason. Here's this. In Pirkei Avos it says, it might even be in this week's Pirkei Avos, which I didn't in the coming week. It says 3 people who sit and eat by one table, and they didn't bench. I'm sorry, and they don't say divrei Torah. If there's no Torah spoken on a table where people are eating, but it says only when 3 people are sitting, and they don't talk any Torah on their table, it's as if they're eating from the sacrifices of the dead. Zivchei mesim, sacrifices of the dead. Simply, it means the commentators say it means that they're eating they're partaking from a meal that was offered to the idols. Because the idols are called the dead, and they're eating, imagine if someone gets invited to partake in the church, what is it, the priest, he gives out wafers, what is it called, commune? So you're invited to come to the commune together, but a person who's any bit of, would not go to receive that, to depart, right? But it says if you're eating on the table without divrei Torah, it's like you're eating from the meal that's from the sacrifices, from meat that was sacrificed to an idol. But now we're going to have a much deeper reason. Why is it called 3 people eating and there's no Torah on the table? Because here's the idea. Why did we say, what's the point of benching? What was the whole mimer? We began at the beginning. The point of benching is your food needs to be enlightened. The food is now coming, the food is klipa. When the food is klipa, it's coming into a Jew's space. It's entering into your space. And you got to now elevate that food and make it as godly as you are. And therefore, you have to have an increased flow of godliness shining upon the food to absorb it. That's the Inyan of making a blessing. Now, we said earlier that this process of converting the food to become Jewish inside of you, that the food needs to become holy, it has a few components, it has a few stages and how it happens. Stage number 1 in its process, the stage number 1 in the process of food becoming holy is that first of all, the blessing you make before you eat. Okay, also, of course, the food has to be kosher. But in addition to that, we said the intentions that you have, that you're eating the food for the right purposes, and a person is not eating in a gluttonous manner. That also has a lot to say on the nature, how you're going to impact the food. And finally, the completion of it all is the benching. But there's one more component that's very important. If you say Torah during the meal, it has a huge impact on the food. Because the Zohar says that the power to do a birur, the power to select good from bad, to separate good from bad, is all the power of wisdom. Chachma has the power to differentiate good and bad. That's why, what makes the fixing of the whole planet? What fixes the world? Torah. Torah is called is the tikkun through the mitzvahs. Torah instructs us what we can. Take a look at the last few parshios we're learning. Torah tells you in this week's parsha who you can marry, who you can't marry, which means what aspect is elevatable, what is not elevatable. Last week in the parsha, 2 weeks ago, what's kosher food, what's not kosher food. So Torah is constantly, in last week's parsha, it's talking about which nega is tahor, which tameh, which is an indication of the person has a blotch on his skin, which means Torah is constantly doing discerning. It's separating. This is bad, this is good. It's all of Torah. It's the power of Chachma. So when you bring down Chachma light at your meal, what do you think that's doing? That's causing an extreme bitur. Okay? Now, even though Torah comes from Chachma, but yet Torah is also referred to as Tiferes. Torah is related to number 3, to the 3rd dimension. Because Torah is a blend of Chesed and Gevurah. Torah on the one hand is very kind. The kindness of the Torah is that it allows things that are not holy to be absorbed in Kedusha. But Torah is also discriminates. It says certain things, no, you can't come in. It's not a free-for-all. It's not open the door, let everybody come. Torah says, we said earlier, certain things are so non-kosher, so deep, so dark, can't fix them. Leave them outside. So Torah has, on the one hand, it's very inviting. It says that you could do, that you can't, that you can elevate, that you can elevate. So Torah is a mix of chesed and gevura. That's why it's called Tiferes. It's in the center. That's why we find everything about the Torah that it's all related to number 3. Torah was given on the 3rd month in the year. Nisan, Iyar, coming up to Shavuos, which is going to be Sivan, is the time when the Torah was given in the 3rd day, in the 3rd month. It was given to 3 days because God said, be prepared for the 3rd day, and I'm going to come down on the mountain. Torah was given through the person who's the 3rd in the family, because Miriam, Aaron, and then Moshe. So everything about the Torah is 3. The Torah itself is divided into 3 parts. Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim. And it was given to a people that are divided in 3. The Jewish people, Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisroel. So there's everything about the Torah is connected to it. It was given in the 3rd millennium, after 2,500 years from creation, in the 3rd millennium. Torah is all about tikkun. It's called Tiferes. It's in the middle. For that reason, the main power of fixing through Torah is when you have 3 people sitting together. Because when you have 3 people sitting together, you have chesed, gevura. Every 3 Jews that come together, you already have a combination of chesed, gevura, tiferes. If they're sitting together, so you have shloisha sha'ach. Now you have the power to do a birur through Torah. Because Torah is number 3. Now, individually, of course, when you're eating alone, you can also do a birur, even when you're eating alone. But it doesn't have the same impact like when 3 people are sitting together. So when 3 are sitting together, when you have Torah, then you're fixing the food and you're elevating it. If 3 people sit together and they don't learn Torah, so then what's happening? Then the food remains unelevated, so it's still in its klippadig state, and we know that klippa is called dead. It's called mason. Kedusha is alive, and klippa is called dead. And where do we see? Especially we know that how was klippa created? How did klippa come into being? We know that there was a shattering of vessels. We spoke about this many times. There was a world of Tohu, the ancient worlds of Tohu, and there was a lot of light in those vessels, and those vessels collapsed. And when those vessels collapsed, they caused the sparks to fall, and that's called death, because they're hinted to in what's called the seven primordial kings that lived and they died. The Torah says, "Vayimloch vayamos." He lived and he was king and he died. We once learned the Maimer that when a person takes food or anything in the physical world and you elevate it, that's called tchias hamesim. You're resurrecting the dead, because this spark fell into a place of death. And when you elevate it, you bring it to life. Tchias hamesim. You bring it back to life, into a oneness with God. But if you're eating, 3 people eat together and they don't speak Torah, which this is like the perfect setting for Torah, and the Torah would have done a tikkun and a birur in the food, and you didn't do it. So ke'ilu achlum as if chamesim, you're eating food that is not nizbarer. It remains in a state, meaning it hasn't been rectified. It remains in a state of shvira, in a broken state, in a klippadig state. It remains in a state of death. And that can't be healthy for a person. So that's what the Mishnah is saying. But why only 3? Because dafka, when you have 3, do you have the ability to release the full potency of Torah. Let's read it inside. You have to eat, you have to say Torah on your table. It shouldn't be like you're eating from the... Kidu as it is known. Torah is the middle line. As it is known. Now, ubechachma, and through Torah, which emanates from chachma, is biridu. That's where you have the birur. Chachma does the main selection process. Levarer amachel, to purify the food, ulahaloisai, and to elevate it, keniskaliel. The alkain, and therefore imloi amru divrei Torah. If you didn't say words of Torah, ki'ilu achlum zivchei mesim. It's as if someone ate from zivchei mesim, from the offerings to the dead. Dahainu, what does it mean? Shiuroi, the leftover Shiva Malachim of the 7 kings, the Tayu of the ancient world of Tayu, Shaloin is Bararu, they were never fixed. Hanikra Mesim, they are called Mesim, they're called dead, Kiyadu as it is known. Ubehepechen, the opposite, kishaoimed divrei Torah. This is so geschmack. The sages refer to it as zivchei mesim. Why the sages picking such a strange thing? Say that when you're eating, when you don't learn Torah, you kill, I don't know, achlama avodah zara. But they're using dafka mesim because that's the problem. You're not doing a tikkun, so it's still remaining shviras hakelim, which is toyu, which is the world of chaos. When you do say words of Torah, but if the sages say, but if you do say Torah, it's as if you're eating from God's table. Why? Because the food becomes godly. It's like you're eating from the altar. The altar, as we said earlier, is a converter. Mechaper, it's an atonement. But why dafka 3? The gimel sha'achlu dafka. Dafka 3 people eating. The lo yamru divrei Torah if they didn't say Torah. Who ki'ilu achlu azivchei meisim, as if they eat from the sacrifices to the dead. The loy be'echad, not by one, or shnayim or two. Lefisha begimel kavin ha'toyra hu amamutza. When you have 3, then you have the Torah, which is the center. V'arei zeh kamoy ha'brecha. And then it's like you have the brecha, like we said earlier, you have the reservoir. In this case, the Torah is the reservoir that causes, right? Hana kacha yedei divrei Torah, through divrei Torah yum shach l'shlashton. You're going to have a hamshachat to all 3 of them and to do the bir. Hinei amar azal. Okay. Now the sages say, there's a new subject here, very special. The sages say, lo asad hakadosh baruch hu yaseh suda l'tzadikim. When Mashiach will come, God is going to make a big suda, a big party, a big meal for the tzaddikim. La'achar sha'oichlan, after they finish eating, v'shoysen, and they drink, noisna lahem koishal bracha. So they're going to bring out the cup of benching and levarech, the bench. V'koizen, anybody that ever goes to a Jewish wedding, or anybody that ever rather made a Jewish wedding and married off, or whatever, a child or whatever, or got married, knows that one of the big problems they have is who do you give which bracha to? You have like 20 rabbis coming, and you want to make sure that everybody's happy. So who are you going to give this one to? You give that one to. You're going to give this blessing and that blessing. Now you're going to have this meal, and you're going to have all the tzaddikim there. Everybody. All the rabbis and all from all the shuls. Who are you going to honor with? Be a problem. So it's good because it's going to go through many, because as we said earlier, the koizeh, and this cup is filled Maayon hameshumar. It has a very special wine in it. It's the wine that has been held in the grapes. This is the wine that's still inside the grapes from the 6 days of creation. As explained elsewhere. And it says like this: they're going to offer it to Avram Avinu. And they're going to say, Barach bench. Avram is going to say, Ani lo yavarech. Forget about me, I'm not doing it. And the reason I can't do it, Yisroel came out of me. We mentioned this earlier. I created Yishmael, I created a big mess in the world, I'm ashamed, I'm embarrassed, I'm not benching. Yitzchak will also decline, because Esav came out of him. And Yaakov finally, they're going to offer it to Yaakov, and everybody thinks, okay, Yaakov is going to accept, because Yaakov has no negative offspring. Yaakov is going to say, I can't bench, because I married 2 sisters. I can't bench. Oh, finally, David. They're going to give it to David. David is not going to hesitate. David is going to be happy to receive the cup. He's going to hold the cup. He's going to say, for me, it is right to bench. The Chsiv, it says in the Pasuk, Kois Yeshuais Esa. The cup of salvation I lift up. And David HaMelech lifts up the cup for benching in the end of days by that great meal. Now, how big is the cup? It contains within it 221 lug. It's a huge amount of 221, which is the same gematria as Iyar, the month that we're in right now. Iyar is 221. It's the same gematria of the wine that goes into the cup. The amount of the wine, 221. Which is gematria erech. Erech apayim. Because what it really means is that this cup is going to fill, we're going to see soon, the cup is Malchus, the cup represents the world, the Keli, the vessel, Malchus is the vessel, the world, all of us. And the wine that's going to be poured in is going to be the wine emanating from Keser, from the crown, the infinite light of God,
called erech. Erech means long, infinite. And that's that special wine that's in this cup. And that's why it's 221 lug in the cup. And David HaMelech, everybody's going to hesitate to touch that cup. They're all going to be frightened. And the only one who's going to approach the cup and lift it up is David HaMelech. So the Chayre asks a simple question. Kol HaMaimer Hazeh Pele. The whole thing is a wonder. Hu de Mishim Shavram Yatzim Menu Yishmael. Because Avram had Yishmael come from him, Loi Ratza Levarech, he doesn't want to bench. V'chimei Olam Loi Birch Birches HaMazon. Such a funny question. He says, and Avram never benched before? It's like suddenly now he's hesitating to bench. Why? Because there's a bunch of cameras and TV reporters there. Wait, what happened in his house? Did he bench? He benched. He wasn't afraid to bench. Why suddenly now is he going to be afraid to, I can't bench? And the same is B'shil Zeh, V'chein B'yitzchak V'Yakov. Lama Le'ratzu Levarich. Why don't they want to make a bracha? Dafka B'koi Zeh Shanastan Lahem. In this cup they give them. Va'adoi says man, and until that time, Arei Baruch, they did bench. So why suddenly they don't want to bench? And they benched on wine. If you're supposed to bench on wine, I'm sure Avram benched on wine. And Yaakov, when he sat with the Shvatim, and they had a meal, they benched on wine. And suddenly now, he declined. The main reason why he doesn't want to bench, because the cup that they gave them has this very special wine, because it has the wine that has been guarded by Novav and the grapes, from the 6 days of creation. And on the wine that is contained in the grapes, dafka, from the 6 days of creation. Dafka, Avram is terrified to touch that wine. Because he says, because Yishmael comes from me. So I can't touch that wine. Any other wine, you bring me from any wine, I'm going to bench. But not that wine. That wine I can't bench with. The Tam sheyatzim mimenu Yishmael. The Yitzchak mitam sheyatzim mimenu Esav. And Yitzchak declined because Esav came at him. The Yeshla Oven, so we need to understand, Chila Mao Inyan, what is the idea of this special wine that everybody's so scared to touch that wine until David HaMelech is the only one who will take it? What does it mean, the wine that is contained in the grapes from 6 days of creation? It is known, so to understand what's so special about that wine, basically, just a quick answer, so you get an idea what he's going to say. He says that when it's by the tree of knowledge, when Chava sinned with the tree of knowledge, and she ate from the tree of knowledge, one of the opinions is that the tree of knowledge was grapes, was a geffen, and it says that Chava squeezed out the grapes, and she made wine, and she gave it to Adam, and Adam drank the wine. And that's where the pagam, that's where the whole fall of creation happened, with the drinking of the wine. And that's what it says, if they would have waited for Shabbos, it was Friday afternoon, if they would have waited for Shabbos, then they would have done an incredible tikkun. Everything would have been good. But they were premature, they drank it too early. So the Eitz Hadas is wine. That's why we see that wine has the quality of bringing out the best in a person and the worst of a person. You drink wine, what does wine do? Wine reveals, wine opens you up. It relaxes you, and it brings, just like it says in Chassidus, that the reason why wine, because wine, it says in the Gemara says, when wine enters, secrets come out. Why? Because wine itself is that way. Wine is first hidden inside the grape. You squeeze it out. So wine releases the secrets. It brings out secrets. Now, being that a person is mixed good and bad, because a person has a godly soul, and a person also has an animal soul. If you put in wine, what is the wine going to do? It's going to bring out what's hidden. Now, it depends what's hidden. If what's hidden inside a person is a lot of good, a lot of knowledge, a lot of holiness, but a person is usually very, very tzniistic, very modest, and they don't show their true feelings and their true purity and their true piety, right? You don't get to see it. But when they drink a little bit, suddenly you hear things coming from them, and they say, wow, I couldn't believe this person is such a, wow. Look at the wisdom, look at these ideas, look at the sensitivity, it's unbelievable. That's, sometimes the wine reaches into the animal soul, and when the person drinks the wine, he's angry, he shouts, he screams, vulgarities. I mean, it's the same person. It's just usually he thinks the vulgarities, but he can't talk it. But now that he drank wine, kind of everything is loose, so everything is flowing. So all the negative is coming out. So you see, so simply you would say that the wine is pariv. The wine is not good or not bad. The wine releases what's in hidden. Now, if it's hidden is good, it's hidden bad. And since most people are hidden good and bad, both together, so what's going to come out? Klipas noga is going to come out. Good and bad. Sometimes more good, sometimes bad. But it's not that way. The wine itself contains within itself the good and the bad. And that's why it speaks to the two sides of the human being as well. That's the Eitz Hadas. That's the wine. But then there's another tree in the Garden of Eden. There was another tree, and the second tree was the Eitz HaChaim, the tree of life. And the tree of life, from the Mimer is going to say, is also grapes. It's also a vine. But that vine is not susceptible for bad. That wine is pure holiness, pure godliness. Well, here was an amazing thing. I mean, what I'm going to say right now, we're not going to see in the Mimer we learned today. We're only going to see that in the Mimer we're going to learn next week or the week after, as we're going to finish this whole long discourse. Because as we said, it has a few phases, but this is just, I'm just jumping ahead a little bit, just that you get a little bit of an understanding. We find a very interesting thing, that after Adam ate from the tree of knowledge, we find that God is very, very, very worried that Adam might go ahead and eat from the tree of life. And Hashem says, we got to quickly protect the tree of life. And God goes and he puts these angels that are like dragons, fiery dragons, fire and swords, to watch the way, to guard the way that he should not go to the tree of life. And it's almost like God is panicking. Quickly, do something, guard, let's get, God forbid Adam should go eat from the tree of life. So we learned in the Mimer already in the past, what would be so bad if Adam eats from the tree of life? If the problem is that he's going to die because he took the venom, he got this poison, and the venom of the snake and all that went into him. So if the problem is, and that caused him a separation from Hashem, and therefore he's going to die, so let him go have the remedy. Let him go eat from the tree of life, and he will live forever. And the explanation that's given to this, the explanation that's given to this idea, is as follows. When God intended, when Hashem initially created Adam, Hashem intended that Adam should live forever. And God wants to give him infinite goodness. Adam would live forever because Adam was holy. And he was 100% innocent and holy. And therefore, if he would live forever, then what would live forever? Holiness would live forever. And goodness would live forever. And that would be great. When you eat from the tree of life, it's as if you're plugging into God himself. And just like God is alive and absolute and not possible to die, then the recipients, the creation, we would be God's partners forever. And be alive and unified with him for all eternity. And that would be great. That was good until the snake planted a chip into Adam. You see, when the snake got Adam to sin through the tree of knowledge of good and bad, the snake became a partner in Adam. He planted, just like we know, for instance, in today's world, we're also aware of it, that one of the biggest problems in everything is, how do you protect yourself against hackers? And when you're online, basically wherever you're going, every website you go to, they're putting cookies, whatever they call them, into your thing. They're putting spyware, and they're spying on you. So wherever you go, they're there as well. And then if they want to take something that you have, they can take it. That's why they can steal your credit cards, they can steal your information, because they planted a piece of themselves inside of you, a piece of their... And that's what happened when Adam ate from the tree of knowledge. Kalipa got inside of him. When Kalipa got inside of him, they have plugged in, and they have now a channel to the human being. So, if the human being will now go and eat from the tree of life, he's going to be accessing that infinite power, the infinite light of God, the infinite absoluteness of God, and he would be accessing and bringing that into his body. When he brings that into his body, guess who gets a piece of that? You get the snake will also get, the powers of evil, the powers of darkness, will also nibble or get from that tree of life. And they will exist for all eternity. And that God cannot have. That the unholy should last forever, that may not happen. So initially, of course, Hashem's intention was that Adam should eat from where? Initially, Hashem's intention was that he eats from the tree of life and he lives forever. But that's before he's contaminated. But once he became contaminated, chas v'shalom. But then what does God say? God didn't go cut down the tree of life. God blessed the tree of life. Hashem sends man to be out of the garden to rehabilitate himself. It's going to take him a few thousand years for him to be able to purge the evil, the ra, from out of his system. Once there's no more remnants of the snake, all of it gets expelled from his body. And that's what we do through Torah and mitzvot. And we do it to ourselves and we do it to the world. We cleanse, we purify, we push the bad out. Once we're clean again, now it's time to go eat from the tree of life and live forever. And guess where the tree of life is? In the cup that David HaMelech is going to be holding. That wine that is in the grape from way back then, that's the tree of life wine, which once humanity is going to drink from that cup, it's going to live forever. But now we also understand why Abraham was panicking and he was saying, I'm not going to touch that. And the reason you understand so great, the reason that Avram gives, he says, because Yishmael comes from him. Avram says, there is a leak. I'm leaking. I represented the divine attribute of kindness, but at my tail end, holy kindness gets perverted into unholy kindness, and it gets perverted into klipa, and it becomes perverted love, perverted. So and therefore, even though once Mashiach comes, the klipa is gone from the world, but Avram is so paranoid, since he was once a source for Yanikas Achitzonim, for giving life, not from the tree of life. Avram, because the tree of life we don't have any access to. We're only receiving from the tree of knowledge of good and bad. That too is a holy tree. It's a godly source. It's planted in the Garden of Eden. It's also a source for godly life. But that's not absolute life. It's not infinite life. So if you have from it, even if the klipa gets for it, it gets stronger, but it doesn't get infinite power. So Avram said, since I was once a source for giving life force to the unholy, for Yishmael to come from me, I'm not going to touch this wine. I don't want to chas v'shalom, even have the thought that Yishmael might get a little bit of this, which I'm taking. The same as Yitzchak declines for the same reason. Yaakov, because he marries two sisters, is also related to this idea, to the possibility of Yanikas Achitzonim, which means the other side's taking energy, for whatever reason, we're going to see later in the Maayon. And it's only King David HaMelech, which resembles the final work, because David struggles his way through, because David is Malchus, struggles his way through to the purification, to so pure, where he knows he cannot be in any way a source of a source for any more klipa there. And that's why David is the only one comfortable in making the Birchas Hamazon. This idea, why David and the others no, is what we're going to develop in the Maayon. Okay? That's just a gist of this. Let me understand why this cup is such a serious business. Because this cup of wine is literally the Eitz HaChaim, the tree of life, that the fruit, at the culmination of all the work after Mashiach comes, we're going to sit down to that meal, God is going to bring out the tree of life in the form of wine that's coming from the tree of life, that's going into the cup, that's holding 221 lug, and that's the tree of life. And okay, so now let's read inside. What? Because Avram has Yishmael coming from him. We know that from Chesed, from every holy Chesed, if it's pure Chesed and it's not mixed with Gevura, what can happen? It goes further. It will go and it will reach a certain point where it will cross over the borders of holiness, and it will enter into the. That's what happened to Abraham. Yishmael comes from him. It represents that from the Chesed channel alone, it can get in the end sidetracked. From Yitzchak also, it can get messed up. Yaakov not, but Yaakov had another problem. The fact that he married two sisters, and that's what he's going to explain later. Let's understand first. What does it mean, the wine that is protected in the grape? From the 6 days of creation, and you do it is known. There is a tree of knowledge. The Eitz HaChaim and the tree of life. Eitz Hadas or Eitz HaMa'uriv Tovera. The Eitz Hadas is a tree that's mixed good and bad. This, it can bring, Eitz Hadas can bring negative emotions. Ba'olam in the world, ba'olam anafradim. That means like this. The Eitz Hadas itself is a godly entity. It's pure good. There's no bad in it whatsoever. It's pure holiness. In Kabbalah and in Chassidus it says that Malchus is called the Eitz Hadas. So it's the Shekhinah, it's pure, it's holy. It's only that it could eventually come out from it Tov and Ra, good and bad. Let's see why. The Eitz HaChaim, we'll get to that. Hulamayla is above Mehistafus Shum Davara. From the Eitz HaChaim, no bad can come. Afilu b'taruvis kolshu. Eitz HaChaim is not susceptible, the tree of life, to any kind of contamination. Kamashakasa be'Eitz Chaim, as stated in Eitz Chaim. V'nei beis minei yayin yesh. So now we have two types of wine. Yesha echad yayin hameshaker. There's one type of wine that's called wine that makes you drunk. And what is the wine that makes you drunk? V'hu yayin shema'uriv boi toivera. And that wine that makes you intoxicated is mixed good and bad. Why? Shaldei hayayin yatsa hasoid. Through wine comes out the secret. You do as it is known. What does wine do? The nature of wine is it brings things from a hidden state into a revealed state, into a consciousness. Like feelings, thoughts, experiences that are bedded deep, deep, deep in your sub-cellars or subconsciousness. When you drink wine, you suddenly start feeling feelings, emotions towards people that you always had, but they're buried deep inside. Wine brings it all into hargasha, into feeling. Now that's the idea that the Rebbe is going to explain. Once things come into consciousness, they're far more susceptible for corruption and for negativity. Things are hidden in a hidden place. It's revealed. In this revelation is mixed good and bad. Shayach is, for instance, a person can be bedinin, a person can be in a very judgmental state, v'roig is gadol, and in a very angry state. Achi yistaf mimena retzicha. A lot of people died as a result of alcohol. People drink, and they're far, far quicker to pull out a gun and shoot someone because they were drunk. And under normal circumstances, they wouldn't have done that. But they drank a little, so they were vuashikris, and that is the intoxication. Shayayin meshaker, wine makes people drunk. Uma'abed adas, it makes them lose their minds. V'yesh boi gam kei mibchenas hatoiv, but wine has a lot of good potential. And that's why you see, in other religions, I'm going to call them other religions, in whatever, there's, people don't drink any wine. No wine. Like wine is a terrible thing. But in Judaism, it's not that way. We have wine always. We don't commemorate any simcha without wine. A bris, a cup of wine. A wedding, a cup of wine. Everything is done with a wine. Kiddush, every holiday we commemorate with wine. And Bechlal, by Chassidim especially, L'chaim, wine doesn't only mean wine, it means any kind of alcohol. So what is it? It's supposed to bring out the good as well. Masha Yismach, it brings you joy. V'yagil, it brings you to the light. V'yetev chasdei lakoyin, and a person's kindness also comes out. If you go to someone who's generally a philanthropist and likes giving, if they drink a little bit, there's a bigger chance that they're going to be a little more expansive in their giving. It's not that they don't want to give, it's just that they give. Generally, their goodness and their givingness is more crumpled up. When they drink, everything gets expanded. So they themselves feel their desire to give more. It's them, it's their true inner want. But other time it's more compressed. Now it expands. Because it's good and bad. This is a physical world and everything is mixed good and bad. So in our world, the good and the bad of the wine is very, very, very extreme. The bad is that it can, a person can kill, the murder from the wine. The good is that a person, I said before, he can do a lot of good. But in a more subtle way, even in the higher realms, in the higher, more spiritual worlds, in the worlds of formation, in the world of breed, there's also wine. If there's wine down here, there's wine there. And what does it mean they drink wine? There is an energy that enters into them. They're taking spiritual wine. And what is it doing? It's intensifying every experience that this angel has, or the spiritual being has, the celestial being has, which a lot of that feeling and emotion is hidden, is now emerging out with intensity, with power. It's coming forth. That's what joy is. Joy is turning up the volume. Everything is getting louder. Everything is getting stronger. V'tainug and pleasure. Shenimtza b'hargasha gedola. The problem is that when when the wine expands and opens you up, you're in a state of feeling much more, and you also feel yourself. And that's why you find a lot of times a person drinks wine and they become pretty boastful about their accomplishments and their I, because they're sensing themselves much more. If you drink very much, then in a sense, you get out of self-consciousness. So a lot of times, drinking a little bit actually makes you relaxed and forget yourself and not be so conscious of yourself. So I guess it all requires, it all depends on the measure of the wine. Or maybe that itself is the good and the bad of the wine. That sometimes it makes you lose yourself, and sometimes it makes you more conscious or aware of yourself. But Al Kapanim says in the higher worlds, wine is not going to cause anybody to murder anybody, but it is going to cause an angel who's usually very unaware of himself to suddenly feel that he exists and that he loves God. When he's rejoicing from wine that has good and bad. Bidakos. Of course, we're not dealing with a very coarse arrogance over here, but even subtly. Through the joy in which there is so much sensory, you're feeling yourself so much, that can cause a certain dense haughtiness, nasus, and pompousness. And he says, even by great tzaddikim, hamisangim al Hashem, whose delight and pleasure is in God, when the tzaddik's neshama is in a physical body, since the body still has a little bit of a tinge of the mixture of good and bad, even of a tzaddik, there's still a mix of good and bad. There can be a little bit negativity in the expansiveness that happens when they drink wine. And even though their source of joy is, let's say they pray well, person, or they said l'chaim, they drank a little more than usual, and then they're singing a nigun, a song, and they're in a strong streak of dveikus and cleaving and connecting, but they're full of hergasha. At this moment, they're full of feeling. They're sensing. What are they sensing? Their love to God and their joy to God. Feelings are dangerous because you feel yourself. And what happens at that moment, of course, here's what's happening. Let's always understand this. At the moment that you're in this state, your love is towards Hashem. The problem is that when the focus of God is going to wear off and you're left with the leftovers of self-awareness, of that increased consciousness, then the emotions that are there, the excitement that can veer off into unholy things. So when things but when things are in a more hidden state, when your love to Hashem is in a hidden state, it is safer and more protected than when it comes out into a revealed state. Like it says, Yismach Yisroel ba'osav, that the Jew, the tzaddik, is rejoicing in his maker, in God. Ach mitzada hargasha shel b'chinas hasimcha, because there is consciousness and awareness that you're feeling the joy, ma'uravu toivara, wherever there is self-consciousness, it's a mixture of good and bad. V'hainu inyan chet Adam Arishan. This is what we know was the whole sin of Adam Arishan. Before Adam Arishan, before Adam ate from the tree of knowledge, he had no self-awareness. And therefore nothing. Everything he was completely lost in the experience of life and in the experience of God without noticing himself. And what happens? Chava gave him shayayin shesachta lechava. Chava squeezed grapes. Kamaymer nazal eshkol shalanovim sachta. She gave him grapes. She squeezed them out of thing. Balachlal hargasha. So he started feeling himself, including his love and his appreciation for God. And then, once you feel yourself, I am, then you start looking around and you see other things that you might want and like, because there's something else other than God in existence that should be satisfied. And that's where there's a problem. Ki lekach nikra eitz hadas. That's why it's called eitz hadas. Das means feeling. Das, meloshan hargasha, to sense. Ki hadas inyan hargasha. Kama shekasav rach etchem yodaiti, v'adam yoda, adam nuchava, v'shekasav makamacha v'dailamev. V'chol zeh sibas gilu yahalim shal yidei hayayin. All of this is happening through the wine. Ki nichnas yayin yotza soyin. When the wine goes in, the secret goes out. V'gilu zeh ba b'b'chenes hargasha. And this revelation and this expansiveness is coming in a manner of a hargasha. Be'etz hadas tovera. And hargasha, feeling oneself, always has the potential for going to good or for bad. Aval yesh oid yain. That's the first wine. That's the dangerous wine. Aval yesh oid yain. There's another kind of wine. V'hu b'chinas eitz hachayim, which is the tree of life. Shalamaylam b'chinas eitz hadas. That's above the tree of knowledge. V'zeu lamaylam b'chinas hargasha legamri. What kind of wine is it? If it's wine, it must be joy. But it's a different kind of a joy. It's a joy, I don't know how to explain it, because I don't know what it is. But he's talking about a kind of joy which comes in a manner that it's so pure that you're not even aware of yourself in that joy at all. It comes with a complete self-nullification. Meaning the reality in which you're rejoicing about is so powerful and so strong that you don't even know that you're there participating in it. You're just like in it. It's just it, not you. Usually joy automatically comes with simcha, with hargasha of self. But this is a different kind of a wine. It's a wine that's still in the grape. Meaning the joy is not leaving. It's not going out. It's not emerging outward. It's a very pneumistic experience. What exactly does he mean? I don't know. The Inyan Hu, but let's hear the words. Sha'asimcha haba miyayin zeh, the joy that comes from this wine, min hahelem legiloi, from the concealed to the revealed, einoi murgish klal o klal. It's a simcha that's not murgish. You don't sense it at all. Elihi betachlis habitul. The person at that moment is in a state of total bittul. Like it says, okay, you know what? There is an explanation. I don't know what it is because I never experienced it, but at least the idea of it is, the difference is, whenever you're experiencing something, there is two parts to it. You're experiencing the something, and there is the you that's experiencing it. Okay, you're at a wedding, there is the wedding, and there is I'm at the wedding, and I'm enjoying myself at the wedding. Now, the more the wedding is taking you, the more the atmosphere is powerful and strong, so strong that it overpowers the sense of self-awareness, of you being aware of yourself, that you got so lost in what's going on at the wedding that you're not even sensing, oh, what a good time I'm having now at the wedding. You don't even know that you exist, but because you're so into the experience of whatever it is. That's a very clean experience, and in that there can't be any ra. I'm talking about if it's in a holy thing. of course, if you're at a crazy concert of who knows what, and you're lost in it, and you don't have self-awareness, but you're losing yourself in, you're not necessarily losing yourself in a good thing. You can lose yourself in a bad thing as well. But I'm talking about when we're dealing with a good thing, you can be lost in the greatness of it, and then you're lost in it. There's no hargasha, there's no self. The problem that simcha usually brings, it brings expansiveness, increased hergish of self, together with the hergish, whatever you're feeling yourself as well. And as long as you're feeling yourself as well, that's where the klipa gets into things. Even if in general, it's a good thing that you're experiencing, but the fact that it comes with hargasha, with self. So that's what's going on. He says, Simchu tzadikim b'Hashem. He's going to explain soon in a moment. That's the difference of a person being in a state of moichen de katnus and moichen de gadlus. Moichen de katnus means immature mochen, and mochen de gadlus means expansive mochen. And what's the difference? Expansive mochen means that you have a broadness of mind in which let's say you're by a tzaddik, you're by a rebbe for Yom Tov. I can remember that, you're certainly by a fabrengen, he's by the rebbe, he's like. So if you have gadlus amoichen, you forget even that you exist. You're hearing exactly what the rebbe is saying. You're hearing this rich Torah that he's saying. You're so lost in the brightness of the tzaddik that you forgot yourself, you forgot your problems, you forgot even that, is he speaking? You're lost. You're just totally lost in it. That's Eitz HaChayim. That's tree of life. That's Moichen de Gadlus. Moichen de Katnus is that you're excited because you're there, but you're still feeling very much yourself in that experience. And you're thinking about, so is he teaching? Is he talking to me? Is this? And you're thinking about your problems and how he can solve. Whatever it is, you didn't lose yourself. You didn't, because of the narrowness. That's called narrowness, because you can't get out of yourself. You're still stuck in a hargasha of self. These are the two wines. A wine that can bring you up to a place where you literally don't exist, but quite on the contrary, that's when you really exist. The real existence is when you can be one with whatever you are experiencing and not separate yourself in that little box of self. Oh, that's called real life. Because then you're one with whatever you're experiencing, as opposed to retaining that narrow consciousness, which was really a prison. Okay, I think that's what he's saying. The Inyan Hazimun ba Maayon zemen helim legiloi eino murgish klal klal. It's not sensed at all. Elu betachnas abitul k'moshe kasef simchu tzadikim b'Hashem. Rejoice tzadikim in Hashem. V'chein v'yismachu b'cha. They will rejoice in you, and they don't feel anything else but you. Pidish simchazu b'Hashem mamish hu klula betachlis. The person is absorbed completely. Built-in nirgeshes v'niglis lebchinas yesh v'davar klal. It's not sensed and felt as a somebody, as a something at all. That there should be able to come from it good and bad. Which isn't true about the wine that's in the tree of knowledge. What does it say by that? V'yayin yisamach levav enosh. Yayin will cause the heart of man to become happy. And the idea that it says the levav, the heart of enosh. Enosh is one of the names that a human being is called. A human being is called a ish, a adam, a gever, and an enosh. Enosh is representing a human being in a very weak state, and it's called mochen de katnus, immature mind, immature consciousness. That's called enosh. This wine is entering into the person who's immature, that is going to feel himself even when he's having wine. Which means it's a wine that's it's expanding you, but you're still feeling that you're being expanded. And if you're feeling that you're being expanded, so you still have that possible pidish enosh ubchinas katnus hamoichen, the narrowness of mind shebe'etz hadas. Avo b'yayin zeh haba b'bchinas bittul, but the wine that's called yayin hameshumar mufshit mebchinas hakatnus. It is completely removed from any kind of immaturity. legamra completely. V'olav nemar yayin, this is a different kind of wine. HaMesamech Elokim, it brings joy to God. V'anoshim, and to men. Anoshim means real men. Enosh means an immature person. Anoshim means a real man. Dafka shem b'chinas moichin, the godless. This is the broad moichin, the loy bekatnos, and not the immature moichin k'moy enosh. Ekeyedua, as it is known, sha'ascholas eitzadas lamata ma'achazeh. We know that the beginning of the eitzadas in the spherotic realm is from God's, so to speak, there's a supernal man, from the chest and lower. The Eitzachayim lamayla ma'achazeh, and the Eitzachayim is above the chest. Shesham moichin de gadlos, and we know that there is mochin below and there is mochin above. The mochin up here are called expansive mochin. Whatever, Kabbalistic idea. Hasadim stimim, and then the kindness is still concealed. Concealed in what? You don't feel yourself in it. This type of wine, it's protected in the grape. What does that mean? It means it's watched in the grape. The grape for wine, grapes to wine are like a vessel to light. Kiyadu, as it is known. Obviously makes sense. The grape is the vessel, the wine is the energy. Va'alkein, and therefore, ba'anovim yedua. That's why we know that by looking at grapes, you can tell what kind of wine it's going to be. Muhusayayin, if it's the type of wine, when you're looking at the grapes. Im b'chinas hachasadim, if it's going to be wine that is more chesedic, kind energy. Or b'chinas hagavuris, or it is going to be a gavuridiga wine. K'mayanavim adumim, like red grapes, b'chinas hagavuris. V'anavim levenim, and white grapes, b'chinas hachasadim, are more chesediga wine. It's sweet. White and red or black grapes. What was the sin by the Eitz Hadas? When Chava took the Eitz Hadas, what did she do? She squeezed out the wine from the grapes. What does that mean? She squeezed out the wine from the grapes. It means that she reveals the joy. The joy becomes very revealed. The wine is the joy. The joy becomes independent. It becomes very revealed. In other words, you become conscious of the joy. You're conscious that you're happy. The real happiness is when you don't know that you're happy. The people that are always busy pursuing, they want to be happy. So if you're busy running after happiness and you're trying to be happy and you're conscious of your happiness all the time, you're not happy. So here, in concept, the wine coming out of the grape, meaning knowing that you're happy, feeling the happiness. Feeling the happiness is already trouble. Real happiness is that you're so happy that you don't even realize you're happy because you're just lost in whatever it is that's making you happy. When the lights go out, light emerges. The light over here is the energy of the joy. When it goes out, it becomes fully revealed. Lamata. It emerges into the worlds that are separated. In the tree of knowledge, good and bad. There's consciousness there. It's yayin hamashakar. It's wine that makes you drunk. It's joy, but it's a joy that you feel. But wine that is protected in the grape, that the oiros, the energy, is still absorbed in the vessel. Obviously, we're talking about a different type of vessel over here. There's the vessel of the recipient, and there is the vessel from the mashpia, meaning it's still in its source. It's in the vessel of the source, meaning the wine is not independent. Something like that. It's a little hard to understand exactly the mashal of what does he mean, that the thing is still contained in its container. Container is usually later. A hashpa goes into a container, as opposed to originating in the vessel. And now it's emerging out from there. It hasn't gone out. What does that mean? That's joy that you're not conscious of. Elohu betachlis habittul, in a state of total bittul, belukus, in the divine, mebli nikr liyash, without any sense of yash, of somethingness. V'zeu l'mayla mebchinas eitz hachayim, v'zeu l'mayla, and this is above bebchinas eitz hachayim. And this is in the level of eitz hachayim, tree of life, she'ein shon shoyrish istafus l'chitzayim. There cannot be even a root for the emergence or things coming down to the extraneous forces. Klal. V'hainu maimer, this is what we say, the ba'atzilus in the world of emanation, iyu v'chiyu v'garmu l'chad. God is completely one with his vessels. Everything is one with him. There's no hergish. Nobody feels as a somebody outside of him. So even though there are sephirot and attributes, but everything is him. Everything is lost in him. Pirisha oirois v'kelim, the lights and the vessels, are unified completely betachlis hayichud. Ubetachlis habitl, and it's all in the state of total bitl, b'matzilan, in their emanator. Acha oir v'akeli echadu ima matzilan. The light and the vessel are totally one with their emanator. V'zahu pirish, and this is the meaning, the iyu v'chiyu v'garmu chad, that he and his emanations and his vessels are all hakol b'b'chinas ein sof. Everything is in a state of ein sof. V'loy nimtza sham shoyresh l'b'chinas pirut klal. There's no root even for anything being separated from him. V'hainu pirish, and that's the meaning, hameshumer ba'navav. The wine, the experience, the wine is the experience, is contained in the grape. Sha'navim em kelim la'oiros. The grapes are the kelim. V'hayayin shua oir hu meshumar mikol yinikas achitzayim, because it's still in its source. And then he gives a second example, which I didn't really understand. We'll skip it for now, because it's in the parentheses. Upirish mesheshis yemei bereshis. And what does it mean? It's in the grapes from the 6 days of creation. It means, you see, from here's the problem. The 6 days are generally the indicative or represent the 6 emotions. Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes. Every day is another one of the emotions. But the emotions, as they are already in Atzilus, in the world of emanation, those emotions are, even though we say now Atzilus is still unified with God, but the emotions are already the source for external revelation. So from the emotions eventually can come, like from Chesed we said before, Yishroel can come out. From Gevura, Esav can come out. The negativity can come out of it. But the 6 days of creation that's indicative of the 6 days of the 6 spheros while they're still in Keser. Because Bereshis means in the beginning, means Chachma, or even higher than Chachma. Because Bereshis a lot of times is translated as Bekadmin. Kadmin means which is before, which is even before Chachma. Which means the 6 emotions, as they're still in such a primordial unified state with their creator, that you don't even feel the emotions whatsoever. That's what it means, 6 days of creation. And that's what we mean, the wine that's in its grapes from the 6 days of creation, which means from these 6 emotions, as they're still in the Keser, as they're still super absorbed in their source. Shalifnei Atzilus. The Mesham Nimshach B'chinas HaTikun B'zah. And that's where the Tikun comes in Zah. Val Oise Yayin HaMeshumar Ba'anavav. And on those wine that's contained in the grapes, Hu Shaloi Ratza Avram Levarech. Avram didn't want to bench on this wine, like it will be explained. Now, on the one hand, you should say that this wine he should be able to bench. As any other wine, you should think that it is susceptible to corruption. But this wine, since there's no consciousness, so there can't come klipa from it. When there's no self-awareness, there can't be klipa. Klipa can only derive energy where there is an awareness of self. But it seems like this wine, because it is beyond all contamination, and no one ever touches it to contaminate it, there is the bigger worry that chas v'shalom, if this could be put into a place where eventually someone can get to it that's not supposed to get to it. That's what it comes out from the Mimer later, which I don't really understand yet. I know that when we're going to learn, as I mentioned earlier, this discourse is a mother discourse, and has another 2 discourses after this that elaborate and explain what the Maimer is saying. So it's pretty okay if in this Maimer we leave certain things still in a vague state, because Be'ez Hashem in the weeks to come, we're going to really tap in deeper to really get what is he saying. So let's continue just a little bit more to the end of the paragraph. So we've already explained earlier that in the blessing of the zimun, of the invite blessing, what's the idea of koshel bracha? When you say nevarech, what do? You want to create, we said earlier, the brecha. You want to create that big pool, that big reservoir from there. We said earlier, first you want to pull into a deep reservoir, that from there the shefa should go to many, to a group plan, a group hamshach. That's the brecha. Now the cup, what's the cup? When you're saying nevarech, you're holding a cup by benching, and you're saying nevarech. Nevarech creates the brecha, the pool. But what's the cup? The cup is the recipient that's receiving from the brecha. It's like we said earlier, you have this big tank. You can't take from the tank. So you pour from the tank into a big bucket. And from the bucket, you give into the individual cups, or individual pitchers. Okay? So now, the kois is the individual cup that you want to draw from the brecha. Now the cup, once you have something in a cup, from here it's not being, from here you're drinking already. From here you're not, this cup is not made to pour to other cups. This is already the final destination. The brecha, on the other hand, the reservoir, that's not called a kois, it's not called a cup. Why? Because the brecha serves 2 functions. It's a recipient from higher. It receives from the nahar, from the river. But to the pitchers, or to the, in this case, to the other channels that are flowing from the brecha, it's the mashpia. A brecha is both a mashpia and a makabel. It's giving to the recipients. It's also receiving from its mashpia. As opposed to the cup is only a recipient, is only a makabel. It's not a mashpia. Okay? It's not an influence. So now let's see. It's an empty vessel. It doesn't have a hashpa, lashpia klal, to give. Only to receive. Like the Gemara says, the Gemara says that in laws of kashrus, when something is holding a middle of absorbing, it can't spit out. When something is in the midst, when a student is sitting in front of their teacher and they're absorbing, they can't teach. Because right now, they're absorbing. Habrecha now, but that's the cup. The brecha, who hepech is the opposite. The anfa pisha nimshach l'toicha, even though it's drawn into it, mahanor from the river, or Maayon or from the spring, canal. But the places that are receiving the influence, min habrecha from this reservoir, from this pool, it's their makar and it's their source. It is the mashpia, the amale kol clay base kibble. It's filling up like the pitcher or like the bottle. It's filling up to the individuals. The kachnikra brecha. Al shem hamayim amizbarchim imena. It's called brecha because it is bringing bracha to the cups. The cup is called kois, not barach, because it's not being mashpia. It's a cup. It's kois shel bracha, because the bracha goes into it. But it itself doesn't have a bracha element to it, only a recipient part. The pool, the bigger pool, is called the brecha. Why? Because it's also a source of baruch. Okay? It's both. That's why it's brecha, it's receiving, but also a baruch, also a bencher. It's a feminine, male, both together, as it has both qualities. Nevertheless, to its essential source, it too is only like a cup. Because it's a mediator in between. In the sphirot, in the attributes, it's like this. Malchus is the cup. Keser is the brecha. Because Keser is the big pool that's receiving from the Ein Sof that's higher than Keser. God is not even a source to give to any cups. He's infinite. God himself. Beyond. So he's pure Ein Sof. God pours into the brecha, into Keser. And from Keser is a source to give life to all the sphirot, all the attributes. And it all pours into Malchus, and Malchus is the cup. Kois shel bracha. Now, and he gives you this idea. The B'chinas HaKeser Elyon, the supernal crown, that's called the mediator between Atzmus Oirin Soif, between the essence of the Oirin Soif, Linet Solim, to the emanations. Bekavin, in the three lines that we spoke about before. Chachma, Chesed, Netzach on the right side, Miyamin, as it says, Chachma Me'ayin Timatze. Ki Yedua. It's emanating from Keser, which is called Ayin. It's the source of the emanations, like a pool. That's the source to small rivulets that are drawn from it, as we said before. But it too is only considered Keser, is only a recipient to the essence of the infinite light. That's like the river. It can and the like. This is a receiver from the lowest level of the Ein Sof Kiyadua as it is known. When someone says Nevarech, what is he doing? When you're saying Nevarech, what you want to do is you want to create a Keser. You want from God himself should emanate a reservoir, which is the Keser. And then you're lifting up your cup to receive from that group blessing, as we said earlier. In the various different channels canal. That's the crown. And the cup that you say Nevarech, your desire in that is that this should be a recipient to Keli, that it should receive from the brecha. When you say Nevarech. The nikra shel bracha. It's the cup of bracha. Kalaima kli beis kibul ekeli lekabala bracha, to receive the blessing. Shenimshach mebchenas habrecha, that's coming from the pool. Ki not seifam betchilasa. But it's interesting. The Keser, where is the Keser going to give? Where is the Keser directing all of its influence? Down to Malchus. Because the beginning is wedged in the end. The Keser is the highest, Malchus is the lowest. But ultimately, the reason why there was a reservoir is only for the cup. Let's think about it. When you dig the big reservoir for water for the whole city, what's the destination? Destination is the cup, is the vessel. Even though this is tiny, but this is still the destination. So, v'aynu b'chinas malchus b'keser ki yedua v'dai l'mev. V'hine yedua, now it is known. Now what does it mean when they're benching with this cup when Mashiach comes? What's going to happen is like this. When Mashiach comes, Malchus, which is now the lowest level, it's the recipient of godliness and flowing it into the creation, Malchus is going to be elevated, and it's going to be elevated into the level of Keser. That means Keser, what's now Keser, when Mashiach comes, is going to be Malchus. And the worlds are going to be receiving from what's today's Keser. What's going to be the Keser then? If Malchus is then going to stand on the level of what today is Keser, so what is going to be Keser then? Much higher Keser. Infinitely higher Keser. And therefore he's saying now, what now? Oh, he's really going to answer the question that I was asking before. I was asking before that the wine that's shielded in the grape, what did I say before? The wine that's shielded in the grape, we said before, is not susceptible to any kind of impurity, because it's still shielded. There's no consciousness. If there's no self-consciousness, there's no ability to corrupt it. It's not susceptible to perversion. So why is Avram Avinu afraid to bench on the cup? That was the question I asked earlier. So why is he afraid to bench? What can happen? The answer is, and this is what he answers really over here, is as follows. What's now considered Keser, what's Keser? Keser means totally nullified, totally bottled, totally nothingness, ayin, one with God. When Mashiach comes and we're all going to be elevated to much higher levels, what's now Keser is going to be Malchus. Malchus always means expression and revelation. That means what's now considered such bittul and nullification and no self-awareness, that when Mashiach comes, that's going to be considered coarse self-awareness. In other words, the biggest tzaddik, who is now in a level of no consciousness of self, just aware of God, when Mashiach comes, he's going to be embarrassed of that level because that's going to be considered utter self-consciousness. And therefore, when Mashiach comes, the wine that was till now hidden in the grapes, that wine now, in a sense, is almost like becoming Eitz Hadas wine. What was once Eitz HaChaim wine, and therefore not klippable, now it will become, it's not real klipa, but Avram is afraid to touch it because there's a much higher level of bittul that's going to be demanded after Mashiach comes. That's why people are worried, like after Mashiach comes, like what are we going to be doing? There's no program anymore. It's like you can't work on anything. Of course you can work. Then there's not going to be evil anymore. But within Kedusha itself, there's going to be extreme avoda to lift yourself up out of any trace of doing something with self-consciousness and self-awareness to go higher and deeper and deeper and deeper. And the deeper you go, the more you recognize that what you thought was no consciousness and no self-awareness yesterday, you realize that that's full of self. That too is too dense for what is really deeper and higher. And that's Malchus is going to be in Kesef. What now is considered the brecha, the keser, la'asid lava rak b'chinas kois. That's going to be the cup, shel bracha. Ki min b'chinas ha-keser da'achshav yeh b'chinas ha-malchus. Malchus is going to be from the keser that's now. V'lo yeh rak b'chinas klik beis kibul, and that's going to be the final destination. Umemelo muchrach loimer, we have to say, sheb'chinas ha-keser sheyeh la'asid lava yeh hagavel ha'mayla b'yoyser, that the keser that's going to be then is going to be much higher. Ki yedua be'inyan aliyas ha'olam is v'day l'meven, and he's going to explain that later, and that's why Avram feels that is also, if Avram takes it, it's going to, chas v'shalom, it could be contaminable. Why? Because what is considered avoda without self-awareness in nowadays is considered an avoda with self-awareness when Mashiach comes, and therefore it's not pure enough. And if it's not pure enough, in subtle, shebesubtle, it's considered that there's klipa there, or possible klipa. So Avram doesn't want to bench, only David HaMelech will, as we will see. Be'ezus Hashem, this will be understood better and clearer in next class, next week, Thursday night.